This meeting will come to order. Today we have a hearing titled Direct-to-Consumer Genetic Testing and the Consequences to the Public Health. With the decoding of the human genome, medical science opened up the possibility of detecting people's predisposition to disease, establishing a better understanding of family ancestry, and developing drugs that are designed to treat genetic conditions. Some companies are now marketing personalized genetic tests, claiming they have the ability to provide extensive information about their health with a simple swab of their cheek. These companies tell consumers that greater genetic testing can predict whether they are more likely to develop diseases. The companies state that genetic tests also inform consumers how they are likely to react to prescription drugs. But how accurate are these companies' analysis? By sending the consumer the results of genetic tests without counseling or medical advice may cause more harm than good for some consumers. How accurate is the health information? How do companies explain differences in their analysis? Is there sufficient government oversight of the practices of direct-to-consumer genetic testing manufacturers? Today we will seek answers to these as we examine direct-to-consumer genetic testing kits and their potential implications for public health.
The promise this research holds to help those suffering or likely to suffer from diseases and medical conditions is very real. We cannot overstate the significance of these advances, and I have no doubt that genomics will revolutionize the daily practice of medicine. However, we also have to be concerned about a rush to commercialization. It is imperative that the information consumers receive is reliable and accurate. No one should be required to make an irreversible health decision, such as a surgical procedure, based on unsettled or evolving science. If people become uncertain as to the reliability of the results of genetic testing, because that reflects the infancy of the science, then medicine may never reap the benefits that this science holds. The science may not be there yet, and I would stress the yet. But it will be. So you must be ready.
GINA, the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act in 2008. It was an important step towards ensuring a person's genetic composition would not subject them to maltreatment at the hands of insurance agencies and employers. So today, faced with the reality of genetic testing becoming infinitely more available and more prevalent, it's even more imperative that we make sure that each and every individual's privacy is ensured. If any of these companies went out of business that held this genetic data, is there some kind of a system right now for what would happen to that data?
It's not an area that we have jurisdiction over for the most part. If we're dealing with labs, then CLIA does have certain protections in place. Covered entities under HIPAA do, but you may be dealing with companies that fall outside of that scope, and that could be a problem.
The gross underrepresentation of African Americans and other minorities in clinical trials has to impact the kind of information we could receive from the kind of genetic testing generally offered. It's my understanding that because of this, results may come back with no information on some of the diseases that cause some of the major health disparities.
Assuming these tests are credible, one would expect that the same DNA would receive the same predictions. Not so. 68% of the time, our donors received different predictions for the same disease. For example, as shown on the monitor, donor number 3 was at the same time at below average, average, and above average risk for prostate cancer, high blood pressure, and type 1 diabetes. These results show that these tests are not ready for prime time.
Company 2 claimed that testing for more markers is probably more accurate. Can you comment on that?
But they did each claim that they weren't surprised that we got different results and that the differences were attributable to the number and type of markers that they looked at. And so that was what several of them claimed, that they were more reliable than the other ones, but they all were not surprised.
So if I'm high risk, does that mean I'll definitely get breast cancer?
You would be in the high risk of, pretty much getting it, so.
I thought it'd be an awesome gift to give my fiance his DNA tested with mine.
Oh yeah,
But
that would be great.
And I was planning on having him and submitting it for him and surprising him. Is that okay?
You could surprise him and let him know that it's ancestry test, and then surprise him with the health information too, or I don't know.
Okay, so as long as I can get the vial of saliva somehow, I can send it in and you can test it for me?
Absolutely.
Okay, that'd be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, we have people, we just don't know that that's what they're doing.
Okay.
You know, people will purchase something, send it in, and get the result.
And how did you get the bag of supplements there?
That was a fifth company we tested, and actually they were very, very different. They would be more of what we would describe the bottom feeders in this industry, the ones who are really more of a consumer scam. They're telling you based on your DNA that they've customized these supplements to me. Yeah, they're saying that if I take these supplements, that it's going to reduce the probability I'm going to get these diseases they say my genetic tests show I'm predispositioned to have.
Whether you're a PhD or a physicist or you're a farmer with a limited education, your medical IQ levels out when someone says cancer or Alzheimer in front of you, and you do not have the ability to interpret these results, much less have a follow-up as to what is necessary. This is all bogus. This is nothing more than the snake oil salesman revisited again in a high-tech community and in a high-tech way. And it's very difficult to protect the public from itself and its desire to be healthy.
But this science has evolved so rapidly in just a few short years that I've been here on this committee. And I can remember Dr. Zerhouni talking to us about the single nucleotide polymorphisms that are being used as these tags as to ascertain the risk factors. And he put a slide up on the board that showed the number that were available in 2003 and then went through the years. And by the time we got to 2008, the entire slide was filled up with these. So there has been a dramatic expansion of the information that is available. A field trip that I took to the National Institute of Health in 2003, I went to a room where they were doing the testing. It was an enormous room full of people at the bench where people were working away around the clock at doing this sequencing. Last spring, I went to the NIH and I saw a machine that was the size of 2 file cabinets, and it was doing the same work of 3 large labs from just a few years ago and doing it much faster, and I suspect with at least as great or if not greater accuracy. So, Dr. Shuren, this knowledge is going to evolve at a very rapid pace.
Do you have confidence that patients are indeed receiving high-quality information from these companies?
With regard to what physicians call analytic validity, that is, if they tell you that you have an A, one of the DNA building blocks, at this position, I believe it. Okay? Absolutely, they do quality work from an analytic standpoint. However, with regard to quality related to what we call clinical validity, that is, what does this tell you about your risk of this disease? I would say absolutely not.
Personal genetic testing kits are generally sold to patients through the internet. That patients send their DNA sample through the mail and check the results of their test online. As a provider myself of 31 years, I am very concerned with the process I just described. I don't see much opportunity to educate patients about the strengths and weaknesses of these tests and how these results, most importantly, should be interpreted. You've got a lot of hypochondriacs out there in this country, and we're going to make maniacs out of them. Tests such as these, they may offer great insights into our health status, but the process by which these tests are conducted and analyzed should include the sound advice of a qualified medical provider like Dr. Christensen. Without the benefit of such medical insight, I fear patients may jump to wrong conclusions. Indeed, they may even jump off a building and create snap medical decisions simply out of fear or ignorance.
Do you think that primary care physicians are adequately trained to interpret and assess and make recommendations based on these tests at this point?
The Secretary's Advisory Committee on Genetics, Health, and Society concluded that physicians generally are not well prepared to provide that kind of counseling.
Our experts in genetics told us the same thing.
So who can interpret it? I mean, what's the use of the test?
And for some of the tests, you'll get a result, and who knows what to actually do with it. In other cases, people may be making a decision, even if it's on lifestyle. If you tell them they have low risk for diabetes, they may not have low risk, and that person may be obese. A physician would say, you're obese, you have unhealthy habits, you're actually at high risk for obesity, regardless of what genetic test says, and yet that person may decide, I can have my cake and eat it too.
If they had a provider, a health professional, nurse practitioner, physician assistant, or physician involved in the process, they'd be better off.
Yes.
We've heard compelling testimony that the science is not there yet to meaningfully interpret the data that these kinds of genetic tests produce regarding risk for diseases. Not even good enough to be interpreted by health professionals. Why then should someone order these tests?
These are probabilistic. They are not predeterministic. And so the information that genetics is uncovering is analogous to the risk factors that you used in your practice and I use in my practice today. There's clearly an educational gap in the physician base. More physicians need to be educated about genetics, but the ones that are very much know what to do with the information because it's akin to the risk information they've been using for all of their practice. There are well-known limitations to the physical exam. There are well-known limitations to the tools that we use in everyday medicine. For instance, the National Cancer Institute just looked at the limitations of family history for screening for prostate cancer and breast cancer. And while indeed you've heard testimony today that the science may be early and evolving, you've also heard testimony today about the medical importance, for instance, of things like pharmacogenomic testing. And I think an important point to make is that none of us should be satisfied with the status quo. None of us should be satisfied with the state of the American healthcare system. And it's tests like these that open up a future of great use.
In addition, we believe that people have the right to access their genetic information if they want to do that, and we think it's really important and it's a great educational tool to learn about genetics within the prism of your own data. We think that's an important aspect to our service as well as getting people involved in the research that we're undertaking to advance our understanding of genetics overall.